Hello interwebs, welcome to No Post on Sundays, the computer video series about computers that don't post, that may or may not be posted on a Sunday. This is a computer that isn't posting, or rather it didn't post when I plugged it in on the counter over there yesterday. So originally this one came in with a customer complaining about stability issues and getting the memory running at XMP and stuff like that. So initially I threw it on my demo counter and went to run up memtest on it just to check if the memory was cooked, basically. And when I plugged it in and turned it on, it was power cycling. So let's see if I can reproduce that fault now. Power on. So we get power, we get lights, fans, and action, but then it cuts out. So yeah, it looks like it's going to do the same thing. I'll let this do it a couple of times. Now, if you've had a BIOS reset, it's not uncommon to have 1 or 2 power cycles as it RAM trains. But that should only happen well, on a desktop computer once or twice. Laptops can sometimes do it a few times. Like I've seen Dells do it like 4 or 5 times before they actually successfully post. But this one is just doing it repeatedly. Occasionally we do get the monitor will do something. It will like possibly power up as if it's about to show something, but then it just dies again. So let's put a stop to that. So first things first, let's do another BIOS reset and see if that fixes the problem. So I'm going to pop the BIOS battery out down here, and while I wait for the BIOS to reset, we're going to check if the battery is flat. I heard recently that apparently the battery only needs to be out for a nanosecond or something like that for it to actually matter. But I usually I take the battery out for as long as it takes me to check if the battery has gone flat. Which it hasn't. 3.17, that's basically a brand new battery. At full charge, these things are generally about 3.2 volts, maybe 3.3, but anything over 3.1 is strong. Anything below 3.1 is used, and if it's 3.0 or lower, I would recommend replacing it. It's unusual for a flat battery to be causing problems on a desktop computer. However, considering how cheap these are to replace, I would always just replace them out of hand. They cost pennies, so just replace it. So yeah, another thing that people often point out as well is they say, oh, you should test it in circuit because as soon as it's out of circuit, the battery will recover slightly. And this is true, but like it's not going to recover multiple volts. It's not going to recover from 2.0 volts to 3.17 in the time it took me to reach for my multimeter. So we can take that with a pinch of salt. Even if we assume that the board is the fractional load that the board places onto the cell is pulling it down slightly, it's not pulling it down by a meaningful enough amount to change my mind on this. So yeah, the kind of time where that might matter is like if I got a reading of 3.01, that might have been like 2.9 once it was in the board, you know? But like if I was reading 3.01, I'd be probably saying, you know what, I'm just going to change that. So yeah, make of that what you will. Right, let's put that back in. Turn the power supply back on. See if anything has changed. Right, it immediately just full started. That's probably our BIOS reset power cycle. And the diagnostic LED is sitting on the DRAM light for a bit longer now, so it's clearly RAM training again. Okay, it's cycled through to boot and then reset. Another power cycle. I'm going to give it one more. No, same thing. Okay. Right, so that doesn't seem to have done it. We saw signs that the BIOS reset worked because it clearly RAM trained. However, it's also just clearly not starting, so I'll turn that off. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try a different power supply on it, because just because the computer powers up doesn't mean that the power supply works. So I'm going to plug a different one in just to eliminate that as a possibility. You can have a power supply that, you know, powers on, but just like doesn't actually provide any meaningful power, or like there's so much ripple that it doesn't work, or something like that. This is one of the reasons why I don't trust power supply testers, because a power supply tester will typically, it will just throw up an LED saying yes, you've got 5 VSB, and yes, you've got your 12 volt and your 3.3 volt rails, but the power supply tester doesn't place any meaningful load on the power supply, which means it might just fall over the moment an actual system is placing a load on it. So yeah, this is why the only real way to test a power supply is a A/B test. So you plug you've got your A power supply, we plug in power supply B and see if the problem goes away. Right, so let's get this guy plugged in. Right, we've got we've got CPU power, PCI power, and ATX power. That should be enough to turn this thing on again, so let's give that a whirl. Sitting on the DRAM light, I think we might be RAM training again. Power cycle. Okay, now it's going through the post LEDs. We're on VGA at the moment. No, same thing. So the fact that it's getting through to the boot LED also makes me think that this isn't a BIOS issue. Oh, it's... Okay, we're cycling between CPU and DRAM now. Now it's sitting on DRAM again. It's doing something different. So we're getting a different response out of it, but it's still not working. So I don't think power supply is our issue here. Even though we're getting a different reaction, I don't think that's our cause. I'm going to start pulling memory out, I think. I'll leave it on this other power supply just for the time being. Let's pull out these modules. So we've got 4 modules fitted at the moment, and I disapprove of 4 memory modules. 4 modules is where you're most likely to experience compatibility issues. And this is DDR4 3200. That's a 2x8 kit. So have we just got 2 identical kits here? Just going to check the model numbers here. 3200C16. Yeah, these are all identical modules, so it's just it's 2 16GB kits here. So it's not mismatched memory or anything like that. I'm just going to stick in 1 for now. It's entirely possible to run 4 modules, and I'm sure there's already people in the comments furiously typing out that they run 4 modules and they've never had a problem. Cool, fine. However, I have seen many cases of 4 modules causing a problem, both directly and indirectly. So let's see if I'm right about this one. The fat controller laughed. You are wrong. Nope, okay, I don't think it's memory. Let's start disconnecting more stuff. I'll leave it with just one. let's just swap out to a different module in a different slot, just in case. You never know. Doesn't really matter what slot we're using right now. We don't care about optimum memory setups. We just need a single thing that will work, and on modern boards like this, any single module in any single slot will work. That is a valid configuration, even if it's not optimal. I'm kind of wondering about the SSD down there. That's a Crucial MX500, the rare M.2 MX500. And it has activity LEDs on it, but I can't remember what they're supposed to look like. At the moment, it's got a red and a yellow LED that are both illuminating, which is making me go, Ah, 1 terabyte MX500 as well. That would have been a pretty penny back in the day. Okay, yeah, let's try that one thing at a time. So this is an Intel system. Can I see what make this board is? This is a Z270 board, so it's 6th or 7th gen Intel. So it should have onboard graphics as well. So I'm going to take out the graphics card next, I think. We can and should also unplug other stuff like the SATA cables and that kind of thing, although I can't see a world where a SATA cable could be causing this kind of behavior. But at this point now, we're just going to slowly start just deconstructing the computer until we get something that works. Or until we get down to just motherboard or CPU. Alright. I've got no HDMI cable plugged in at the moment, so we won't get a picture. We're just going to see if it just turns on and stays on. Still nothing. Nope. Okay. I'm going to kind of tempted to reseat the CPU. Sure, let's do that. Yeah. Thermal paste is cooked. Pushpin's my nemesis. Oh, don't tell me I've got to get this from the back. Pain. Okay. Okay, no bent pins. Not that we would expect any, to be honest, but yeah, the cooked thermal paste isn't a good sign. Might be that this is just long since baked itself to death, which is unusual for an Intel CPU. Sorry, for old Intel CPUs. In the good old days when Intel were good, yeah, Intel CPUs were pretty bomb-proof. Obviously the modern ones, not so much, but yeah. But from the period that this thing is from, like I said, this is 70. Actually, let's check what this actually is. It's a 7700K. So yeah. In the old days of the 7700K, yeah, this thing will be pretty bomb-proof. This thing ain't gonna it'll throttle into the Stone Age, but actually burning out, yeah, no, I don't see a world where that's gonna happen. But I don't know. I think if it was a CPU issue, the CPU is working to an extent because our post LEDs are going CPU DRAM VGA boot. You know, we're getting through that cycle, but the CPU could be super unstable. It might fall over once we get through post and the CPU actually wakes up and starts trying to do stuff. That would be my concern. All right, I will disconnect SATA just for posterity. Changing multiple things here, but whatever. Can't see a world where that's it, but let's just unplug some other stuff just in case. Right, that should do. Right, stick a heatsink on top of that. Doesn't matter that it's not on there properly, it's just double checking. Power on. Power cycle. Same thing by the looks of things. Now, as luck would have it, I happen to have another 7700K on my other workbench, which is extremely fortuitous because at this point I can just drop another CPU into this and see if the same thing happens. And I think that's what I'm going to do. Because right now we're kind of down to CPU or motherboard here. There's not really anything else it can be as far as I'm concerned. And if we get it down to being the motherboard, then the next stage after that is we take the motherboard out of the chassis and we start doing motherboard diagnostics, up to and including reflashing the BIOS on it. Although I don't believe that this is BIOS, but we'll see. Yeah, let's just take that back out and I'll just stick another CPU in there because I can. This is the 7700K that just came out of the YouTube rig, which is currently sitting around waiting for me to decide what I'm going to do with it. Just good enough to not be worth throwing out, but also not modern. I'm probably going to build it into a cheap gaming rig for some kid to play Fortnite on or something like that. Here we go. Alright, we're doing a bunch of power cycling here very quickly. That's because there's a new CPU. So it detected that the CPU changed. Now we're sitting on the DRAM light. We're RAM training. Power's off. Power's on. RAM training again. Very different behavior considering it's the same model of CPU. That rapid power cycle there, where not even the power, well, rapid reset cycle rather, is strange. It gets one more chance. It should absolutely be posting by now. Oh, it stayed off that time. Okay, power on. Oh, it's mega off. It's dead. Doesn't want to turn on. Ooh. I'm just going to check that I didn't drop a bunch of thermal paste into the CPU socket or anything like that. Which I didn't. Congratulations, me. Alright, let's try again. Whoops. Heatsink. They don't instantaneously catch fire, don't worry about it. Doing that reset cycle thing again. And once again, it's turned off and stayed off, and it won't turn on. Very well. Okay, motherboard out. Right, now before we go any further, I want to do some control tests. I'm going to put the customer's CPU into my old 7th gen motherboard. This is an Asus Maximus 9. Really nice motherboard for this generation. And I'm going to throw in some of the customer's RAM as well. Not that we're expecting this to be a memory issue at this point, but just for fair testing. And we're going to post-test this and just check if the customer's CPU works, because if we see the customer's CPU post and run, then at that point we can just stick it back into the board and just, you know, eliminate the CPU as a point of contention here. Heatsink. Power on at the back. And power button. Boop. Right, so we're on, and we've got hex codes on this one that's cycling. We should get a picture out from this. Yeah, there you go. Okay, cool. Right, so this CPU and this memory works. Now, we've not done exhaustive testing on the CPU. I would probably just plug in a memtest86 drive or something like that and just get it to do some memory testing or something just as a confidence test. But the fact that we just immediately got a picture out of it, you saw how quickly that RAM trained and posted. There was no fuss there at all, no problems. So that's fine. All right, let's get this thing out of here, because now we know that this memory stick and this CPU works. So this motherboard is no longer relevant. It seems pretty apparent at the moment that we have a dead motherboard. It's now just a question on if we can make it work. Right, same test. CPU. Memory module. HDMI. EPS. ATX. Heatsink. Power on. Power on. All right, instantaneous power cycle. Now we're sitting on DRAM. VGA. Boot. Power cycle. All right, I'm going to let that go around another 2 times just for posterity. However, immediately we're back to our original fault. Okay. Right, I'm going to flash the BIOS, I think. Oh, I've just found this does have HDMI. I was being unfair. There's HDMI underneath the USB 3 ports. Not that that matters, but just before someone is just like, it does have HDMI. Okay, I'm going to flash to the BIOS. This motherboard has dual BIOS on it, as a lot of Gigabyte motherboards do. Now, there's two flavors that Gigabyte dual BIOS comes in. There is the full-fat dual BIOS system that you'll see on their big boy motherboards, where you actually have a physical selector switch between the two different BIOSes, like what you see on a graphics card. This is good because there is a physical switch. You say, use this BIOS chip or use this BIOS chip. However, this is the other type, which is an automatic dual BIOS, and it's supposed to fall back if there is a problem with the BIOS. But I don't trust that as far as I can throw it. I don't know, man. I've just never seen it work. You know, maybe people can tell me otherwise. There is apparently a way you can force it to boot from the backup BIOS by shorting out some of the pins on the BIOS chip. Like you could, I think you short like the reset pin to ground or something like that holds the main BIOS chip in reset, so it falls back to backup BIOS. But I don't trust any of that. I'm just going to take this BIOS chip off the board. I'm going to reprogram it, and we'll see if that does anything at all. So let's get to it. I'm going to start just by retouching the pins on this. Are we unplugged? Yeah, we are. I'm going to start by just retouching the pins on this with some fresh solder. There we go. Let's just pop out the BIOS battery for good measure as well. And now I'm just going to use hot air to hot air this off of the board. And I'm going to be a little bit careful to try and dodge these capacitors and this plastic housing here. Surprise attack. And off it comes. Do go off at me in the comments about how I should be using a clip, though, you know, because that wasn't difficult, right? I will continue to be defensive about this. Right, now I'll sit this in a little socket adapter. And I'll put the socket adapter into my programmer. This is a CH341A version 1.7, which is my recommended cheap programmer. Don't get the one with the black PCB. Get the green one because it has the voltage selector switch and it's much better. And now I'm going to start up Neo Programmer. And let's get a display capture. And let's detect our chip. IC not responding. Okay then. Let's jiggle it in the thing. What is this? This is a 25L6473F. Try it again. There we go. MX25L6473F. Bam. Read. Okay. Right, and while that's reading, let's find a BIOS for this. Right. GAZ270. Gaming K3. Gaming. And this is a Rev 1.0 board. It says so in the bottom left of the motherboard. BIOS. Right, any significant notes? Yada yada yada, yada yada yada. Nope, okay. F9D 2018. Hasn't seen a lot of updates and certainly not seen one for a long time. Back in this era, BIOS updates were just kind of neither here nor there. You just didn't bother unless you had a reason to. Right, copy that. Okay, there's our BIOS to flash. Now our read is done. We'll save this dump. And so our dump file and our file to flash are the same identical size, which is always a good sign. So now let's open our new one. Show me all files. Select that. And I'm going to off protect, erase, blank check, write, verify. So we turn off the chip's write protect, we erase it, we make sure it's erased, write the new data, verify that the data wrote correctly. Go. Programming is complete. So let's unplug all of this and put the chip back on the board. Get out. Okay, pin 1 goes up there. Right, let's see if that's done anything for us at all. BIOS battery in, HDMI, power supply on, and power. So DRAM, VGA, hey, how about that? Grand. So much for backup BIOS, huh? I'm telling you, man, BIOS flashback, backup BIOSes, they work in theory, but if you want to get into repair, get yourself a programmer and learn how to flash BIOS chips. What? Really cheap to do. Love it. Okay, let's put this back together again. Okay, this thing is all built back up now, so let's turn it on. Off it goes, and we've got the graphics card and everything fitted, so we're going to drop into BIOS now, and we're just going to do a quick config in BIOS. I just want to make sure that it's seeing all the RAM, make sure the drives are detected, and so on. Then after that, we need to turn on XMP, which might be a stalling point due to the 4 memory modules. So hopefully we won't get hung up there. And then lastly, for testing, I'm just going to boot into memtest just to do a confidence test, basically. I'm not going to do extensive testing here on video just because it's boring. Apparently... Oh, I didn't plug in the keyboard. I was just like, oh, we didn't go into BIOS. Fine. Okay. What's it actually... Okay, well, I'll quickly give it 30 seconds of this test just to sanity check. Right, well, we're seeing our CPU there, this 7700K, and it's not at an astronomically high temperature. And also we're seeing all 32 gigs of RAM, so that's fine. So the RAM identifies as 3200 megahertz, but this is just what the RAM identifies as, not the speed it's actually running at. At the moment, it shows that it's running at 22.6 gigabytes per second. I don't know what speed that works out to, but I know we're not in XMP, so that will be low. But let's just make a mental note of that so we can see what it changes to when we turn on XMP. At any rate, this is not spitting out errors all over the place. Obviously, you need to run memtest for a lot longer to get a definitive answer, but the fact that it's not just immediately fallen over shows that the computer is working. So I'm going to reset, plug in the keyboard and actually go into BIOS now. Okay, right, advanced, we want advanced memory settings and we want XMP profile 1. So that's going to step our memory multiplier up to 32 for 3200 megahertz. Now again, 4 memory modules, sometimes switching on XMP can be awkward with 4 memory modules. However, 3200 isn't super exotic speeds, so I don't think we're going to have problems here. And also, it is going to go to 1.35 volts, which should be enough for what we're trying to do. If we were struggling, then we might end up running at like 3000 megahertz or something like that. Again, with 2 modules, we would not even blink trying to do this, but 4 modules, you'd be surprised how awkward that can sometimes be, especially on older boards like this. I'm not going to change anything else for now. I'm just going to save and exit. So let's save and exit. And the board's going to sit on the DRAM light for a moment while it RAM trains. There it goes. Yeah, no problem. Now we're back into memtest, and you can see that our memory speed is now up to 28.3 gigabytes per second. So that shows that we're actually in XMP now because we've got the correct speed. That exact speed is going to vary depending on your memory. It's going to depend on not just the clock speed or mega transfers, which is the 3200, but also it's going to be based on the timings of the memory as well. The tighter your timings are, the more data it can shift in and out per cycle. The other way of checking as well is obviously when we get into Windows, we should see that Windows will actually tell you what speed your memory is running at from Task Manager. So I'm going to interrupt this test because I'm not going to do full testing on stream. I just want to check that the computer boots now. So I've just unplugged the flash drive and I'm going to hit reset, and we're going to see if it actually boots into Windows, which hopefully it should do. Yeah, there we go, and that's booting Windows now as well. Excellent. So what I'll do now is I'll kick this over to another bench and I'll probably run a full memtest cycle on it, and I might throw some other arbitrary tests at it, you know, give it a superposition run as a gaming test and a couple of Cinebench cycles just to make sure the CPU doesn't fall over, that kind of thing. And this thing will be absolutely fine. So yeah, the fault was a scrambled BIOS. I don't know how it ended up in that situation. Maybe the customer did a BIOS update that went bad. But at any rate, reflashing the BIOS has done the trick. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.